Brother Rodney. Good afternoon, and thank y'all for being here. What a difference a week makes. I want to thank the members of the legislature, some of whom are present today, for their hard work. And really the legislature as a whole, that they did show that they were willing to come together in both the House and the Senate and to work hard on a good, solid compromise that does the very best in a budget under the budget constraints to prioritize the needs of the people of our state, while obviously taking a very responsible approach about how our state spends and saves money. I do believe this was much harder than it needed to be, and it certainly took longer than should have been necessary. And I think that's obvious because we circled back to just about exactly where we were when the process fell apart last week. And that's the budget that was adopted. But in the end, we got the job done. And this is a bipartisan budget in every sense of that word. What's more important, however, is what this budget does, what it looks like. You all know that it contains no new revenue, despite the fact that we had a $400 million hole in the budget as it relates to a continuation budget. It nevertheless funds higher education without a reduction from current year for the first time in 9 years. Think about that. It fully funds TOPS. So if you take those two things together, from that perspective, this is the best we've done for higher education in the state of Louisiana in right at a decade. That is important. We're not doing enough on a per pupil expenditure measure. We're still about dead last in the Southeastern Conference, and I'll use that because we always compare ourselves to the Southeastern Conference. We ought to do it in academics too, and we ought to do it in the classroom. It also funds children and family services and supports law enforcement and the Department of Corrections. It does make cuts across much of state government, especially the Department of Health. Our partner hospitals will see a 6% cut on average, and that's on top of the cuts that they got last year. And so, Jay, you now get to go to work renegotiating those deals. It puts in writing a request that I, working through Jay as the Commissioner of Administration, continue a practice that he started last year, and that is to work with all of the executive branch agencies to adjust spending so that we can respond to a mid-year shortfall should one arise. This budget also incorporates more than $300 million in state general fund savings because of the Medicaid expansion. Think about how hard this budget would have been without the Medicaid expansion. And those dollars are scattered throughout the budget. They were not left in the Department of Health. This is a prudent budget. It is a conservative budget, and I am proud of that. As a Republican colleague in the Senate today said, before voting against the bill, I might add, it's probably the best budget I've seen in my 10 years here in the legislature. Indeed, he's right. There were no gimmicks, no one-time money. And I want to thank Jay Darden and the entire Division of Administration for their hard work and the consistent way that he approaches his job here and the very honest, straightforward way that he presents the budget. You know, it really hasn't happened much in the last decade, but this is a budget the people of Louisiana can be proud of. It's not perfect. It doesn't do everything we would want to do. But under the circumstances, it does about the best we can do to adequately fund our critical priorities. Make no mistake, the fiscal cliff is coming. and we're going to have to find the will, the courage to come together and do the hard right instead of the easy wrong. The days of being able to delay are going to come to a close rather soon. And I'm not naive, it's going to be hard. But there is hope. If you just look at the work that was done around criminal justice reform and that huge coalition of folks from across the ideological spectrum, House and Senate, Republicans, Democrats, independents, business folks, labor folks, the Pew Charitable Trust, the ACLU, the religious community, all came together to fix something that we knew needed to be addressed in Louisiana, and it was hard. That's why it took 40 years to do it. That's the only way we're going to be successful in meeting our obligation to avoid this cliff that's coming next year. It's still going to be hard, and I'm aware of that. But today we passed a budget that is sensible, that is honest, and proves that we can work together towards a common goal. So with that, I want to take any questions that you might have.
How soon before the next special session?
You know, that's a good question. And I truly don't know. If you just look at this fiscal session, the last scheduled fiscal session before the fiscal cliff, which means this is when we were supposed to act, the legislature, and specifically the House, because that's where these revenue measures have to originate, had before it bills filed to do every single thing that the task force recommended for budget and tax reform and to stabilize our state, and did none of them. It had before it a package of legislation that I asked it to enact. The vast majority came straight from the task force report. Did none of them. And did nothing on its own. There was no plan on its own. So until I can be reasonably assured that a special session would not result in the same inaction, the same failure of leadership, why would I call one? So we've got a lot of work to do. I'm certainly not giving up. We're going to roll up our sleeves. We're going to try to put together a working group so that we can get started right away. The answers to the problem aren't any different. The solutions from which we have to choose, they're not any different. The options before us are not any different. I do suspect that if there's one thing that will be different, it'll be the sense of urgency, because as we get closer to that cliff in time, perhaps some folks will take it more seriously. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, do you plan to do any sort of kind of campaigning on a larger scale to try to build public support behind any of your ideas ahead of the special session?
Well, I just said I'm not sure there's going to be a special session. No, obviously we are going to continue to engage the public, and they will know where we are. We will be listening to them, and we'll be working with the legislature. It is imperative that we have a plan that enjoys support from the people of Louisiana. I understand that, and we will continue to do that. We are also going to work directly with legislators in the House and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats in each body, the leadership, to try to figure out where there's common ground and stake it out, and where there's not, build towards finding some. Yes, ma'am.
To that point, are you planning to push forward with something similar to what we saw you propose in this session, the CAT, or are you going back to the drawing board in terms of what you will be proposing for dealing with the cliff?
I don't know exactly what's going to be in the plan. I will tell you that the fact that 80% of the corporations in the state of Louisiana pay no income tax is a real problem, because any new tax structure needs to be equitable, it needs to be fair, and I don't know how you get there if you don't fix that problem. But it's way too early for me to tell you what will be in or out. Any other questions?
Just one
Yes, sir.
follow-up. You just said you weren't sure you were going to call a special session. So kind of a two-part question. What do you have to see before you do call one? And what's the alternative if you don't?
Well, the alternative is that we come back in here in March of next year in a 3-month general non-fiscal session and pass a budget that is going to be at least $1.2 billion short of state general fund. And the second part of your question, you know, if I were in a courtroom, I would have objected because that was a compound question. What was the what was the other part?
I don't know, but you said that was a good one.
Look, beg pardon?
What do you need to see?
Oh, well, I will be looking for the speaker. I will be looking for the Ways and Means chairman. I will be looking for leadership in the House of Representatives to tell me that there is a plan that they're going to push towards. If there is not, why would we come back and do what we just did at the cost of $60,000 a day? Thank y'all very much. Appreciate you. Enjoy your summer.